On the 3rd March 1991, a major turning point unfolded in the Horn of Africa. The winds of change were already blowing, but on that day it became clear that a 17-year regime was beginning to crumble in Ethiopia. To understand the weight of that moment, we must go back to 1974. In 1974, Emperor Haile Selassie was overthrown in a military coup. The monarchy, which had ruled Ethiopia for centuries, came to an end. In its place rose a Marxist-Leninist military junta known as the Derg. At first, many Ethiopians hoped for reform, land redistribution, modernization, and justice for the poor. But what followed was one of the most turbulent chapters in the country's history. Under the leadership of Mengistu Haile Mariam, the Derg consolidated power with force. The late 1970s saw the Red Terror, a brutal campaign targeting perceived political opponents. Thousands were imprisoned, tortured, or executed. Fear became a tool of governance. Meanwhile, the country faced devastating challenges. Civil wars intensified across multiple regions. In Eritrea, a long-running independence struggle gained strength. In Tigray, armed resistance movements organized against the central government. Economic mismanagement and conflict worsened conditions. And in the mid-1980s, famine struck, drawing global attention and humanitarian response. By the late 1980s, the Derg was weakening. The Cold War was ending. The Soviet Union, once a key supporter, began withdrawing assistance. Resources were stretched thin. Morale in the military declined. Rebel coalitions grew stronger and more coordinated. One of the most powerful rebel alliances was the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, the EPRDF, a coalition that included the Tigray People's Liberation Front. As 1991 began, the balance of power was shifting rapidly. Then came early March. On 3rd of March, 1991, rebel forces made significant advances in northern Ethiopia, capturing strategic territory and pushing government troops into retreat. It was not a single battle that changed everything, but a clear signal that the regime's grip was slipping. Momentum had shifted across the country. The sense that the Derg was nearing its end grew stronger. Cities once firmly controlled by the central government were now vulnerable. Supply lines were breaking. Military units were defecting or surrendering. By May 1991, the situation reached its climax. Rebel forces advanced toward the capital, Addis Ababa, facing imminent defeat. Mengistu Haile Mariam fled the country on 21st May, 1991. Days later, the EPRDF entered Addis Ababa, effectively ending the Derg regime. But 3rd of March stands as one of the key moments in that final chapter, when the collapse moved from possibility to inevitability. The fall of the Derg reshaped Ethiopia. A transitional government was established in 1995. A new constitution introduced a federal system based on ethnic regions. A major structural shift in governance. The aim was to provide autonomy to Ethiopia's diverse ethnic groups, while maintaining national unity. Eritrea, which had fought for independence for decades, formally became an independent nation in 1993. After a referendum, the Horn of Africa had entered a new era. For Ethiopia, the end of the Derg meant the end of centralized military socialism and the beginning of a new political experiment, ethnic federalism. The country pursued economic reforms, infrastructure development, and diplomatic engagement across Africa and beyond. Yet, like many transitions, it brought both hope and complexity. The new political order faced its own challenges, balancing regional autonomy with national cohesion, managing ethnic tensions, and navigating political pluralism. Over the decades that followed, Ethiopia would experience growth, reform protest movements, and renewed conflict. But 3rd of March 1991 remains symbolic. It represents the moment when authoritarian rule began its final descent. It represents the power of organized resistance. It represents the end of one chapter and the uncertain beginning of another. The Horn of Africa is a region of strategic importance geographically, politically, and historically. What happens there often echoes beyond its borders. The collapse of the Derg shifted alliances. influenced regional stability, and reshaped relations with neighboring countries like Sudan, Somalia, Djibouti, and the newly independent Eritrea. History is rarely defined by a single day, but certain days mark irreversible turning points. 3rd March 1991 was one of those days. It was the moment when decades of war, repression, and struggle converged toward transformation. For many Ethiopians, it marked the end of fear under a military dictatorship. For others, it marked the beginning of new uncertainties for the region. It altered the political landscape of the Horn of Africa. Today, when we look back at that date, we see more than troop movements or political maneuvers.